I hope you all watched the previous videos. Let's start the session. We're continuing the chapter 3, measuring device and tools. Okay. Dash is measured using a sine bar. So answer is angle. Okay. You can see here in the image. Okay. The angle is measured using a sine bar. Okay. Sine bar works on the principle of trigonometry. Okay. So you can observe here we have to find the angle theta. Okay. So the height of the slip gauges is considered as perpendicular, okay, and the length of the sine bar is considered as hypotenuse, okay. So in a right angle triangle, the sine of an angle is the ratio of perpendicular and hypotenuse, right? So here sine theta, that's equals to, here perpendicular is height of the gauge blocks, okay, upon here hypotenuse is L, length of the sine bar, okay. So the length of perpendicular is given by the height of the slip gauge, while the length of the hypotenuse is given by size of the sine bar. Okay. So therefore, sine theta equals to height of slip gauge upon length of sine bar. I will write it down here in detail. Okay. Sine theta equals to height of slip gauge. Okay. Height of slip gauge. Okay. By length of sine bar. Length of sine bar. Okay. What is the formula to calculate sine of an angle? That is sine theta equals to perpendicular upon hypotenuse. Okay. The go side of plug gauge is equal to which of the following? The go side of plug gauge is equal to minimum size of job. Okay. So answer is C, minimum size of job. Okay. You can see here in the image, that is go and no go plug gauge. Okay. So plug gauge is made of hardened steel and is used to check the size of a hole. Okay, it can be used to check straight, tapered, threaded, square, or spline holes. Okay, the double-ended plug gauge is used to check the size within limits. Okay, at one end there is a minimum size of limit which is called go. You can see here in the image. Okay, and at the other end there is a maximum limit of size which is called no go end. Okay, this ends can detached from the hand and replaced as per requirements. Okay, what is the main advantage of using a gauge? So the answer is all of the above, because we can save the time. Okay, we can increase the production and produce parts are interchangeable. So the main advantages of using gauges is, in the inspection room, jobs can be tested in less time and in a large quantities. Okay, and increase in production also there. The job can be tested and corrected in less time on the machine. Okay, cost per job come down due to high production using gauge. Okay, gauges are easy to maintain. Okay, produced parts are interchangeable. Okay, which of the following factors cannot be investigated through screw pitch gauge? So that is lead. Okay, so the screw pitch gauge is used to measure pitch, profile, and depth. Okay, so the wrong answer here is lead. Okay, it is used to check the pitch of external and internal threads. Okay, screw pitch gauge is used to check the pitch of external as well as internal threads. Okay, it is also known as thread gauge. Okay, also known as thread gauge. Okay, The procedure of joining the slip gauges together is called, that is, ringing. Okay. To get the correct size by connecting the slip gauges together is it necessary to use the ringing process. Otherwise, the air gap between the gauging surface will have the size of the gauge become more. Okay. What are the common types of ring gauge? So all of the above: plain cylinder, cylindrical ring gauge, taper ring gauge, thread ring gauge. Okay, and few more are there. So we can consider this one as one and two and three. Okay, and four here I'm writing. Okay, plain cylindrical gauge, taper gauge, and thread gauge are there, right? So and the fourth one is ring gauge. Okay, and fifth one is form gauge. Okay, and the sixth one is caliper gauge. Okay, caliper gauge. Okay, which one of the following instrument is used to measure the fault of 3 point inside micrometer? Okay, so here the answer is ring gauge. Okay, you can see here in the image, these are the ring gauges. Okay, so ring gauge is used to check the outside measurement of a cylindrical job. You can see here in the image how the process gonna work. Okay, it is used to measure the fault of 3 point inside micrometer. Okay, there is only one size hole in it whose size is equal to the nominal size of the cylindrical job. Okay, the outer part of the ring is null so that it can be held firmly. Okay. Ring gauges are three types. Okay, plain ring gauge, taper ring gauge, thread ring gauge. Okay, which one of the following instrument is used to measure the angle of job or its taper with accuracy about 5 minutes? So we know that we have discussed that, right, in the previous slides. So here the answer is sine bar. Okay. Sine bar is used to measure the angle of the job or its taper with accuracy about 5 minutes. Okay. A sine bar is used either to measure an angle very accurately or phase locate any work to give given angle. Okay. Sine bars are made from a high chromium corrosion resistant steel. Okay, and is hardened, precision ground, and stabilized. Okay, sine bar is used to measuring angles for milling, grinding, and inspection applications. Okay, this is the sine bar. Okay, to check external V threads, which gauge is used? That is ring gauge. Okay, to check external V threads, ring gauge is used. Okay, these are the ring gauges. Okay, a no-go and go type. Okay, it is used for checking the diameter of shaft and studs. Okay, ring gauges are used for comparative gauges as well as for checking, calibrating, or setting off gauge of other standards. Okay, ring gauges are metrology tools that are used for gauging the other outer diameters of pins, shaft, splines, fasteners, dowels, and studs. Okay. Thread snap gauge is used to check. It is used to check external threads. Okay, you can see here in the image. This is the thread snap gauge. Okay, it is also called thread caliper. Okay, it is also known as thread caliper. Okay, thread caliper. Thread snap gauge are only used for checking external threaded parts. Okay. Thread snap gauges are available in either in knife edge style or a roller style. Okay. The front set of gauge members are a complete go gauge. Okay. Adjustable thread snap gauge is adjusted according to it is adjusted according to the threaded diameter. Okay. You can see here in the image, this is the adjustable thread snap gauge. Okay. So to adjust them, loosen the locking screws and adjust the angles with the gauge block set in between them. Okay, it is used to check the conditions and acceptability of extremely threaded parts rather than smooth finish surface. Okay, to check TPI or pitch dash is used. That is screw pitch gauge. Okay, TPI means threads per inch. Okay. Screw pitch gauge is used to check the pitch profile and depth of thread. Okay, I'll write it down here. Use it to check the pitch profile. Okay, used to check the pitch profile and depth of thread. Okay, depth of thread. Okay, and it is also known as thread gauge. Okay, also known as thread gauge. Okay. It is used to measure of thread per inch and also the thread angle of screw. Okay, so you can see here this is the screw pitch gauge. Okay, to check the accuracy of tool, grind on 60-degree dash is used. So the answer is center gauge. You can see here in the image. Okay, this is how we check the accuracy of tool. Grind on 60-degree is used. Okay, center gauge is used. So this is the gauge made by cutting various angles in a carbon steel sheet. Okay, generally these angles are 60-degree, 55-degree, 47.5-degree. Okay, I'll write it down. 60-degree, 55-degree, okay, and 47.5 degrees. Okay, the inner and outer angles of 60-degree are made in the middle of the gauge and the side having angle of 55 and 47.5 degrees. Okay, use of center gauge. So the use of center gauge is for setting to tool at accurate position and height. Okay, for checking angle of thread tool. Okay, you can see here in the image. This is how the center gauge works. Okay, these gauges are used to check angles while making tools for cutting threads. Okay. The same gauge is also used for fitting the tool at right angles to the job when the tool is made at right angles. Okay, you can see here in the image. What is the principle of working of a plunger type dial? So it converts linear speed into radial speed through rack and pinion. Okay, you can see here in the image that is the plunger type dial. Okay, the working principle of the dial gauge is depend on the movement of the spindle. Okay, you can see here in the image. So this is the spindle. Okay, so it travels up and down. This moment is then converted to rotating needle scale reading. Okay, the dial gauge can measure up to a reading of 0.001 mm or 0.001 mm. Okay, it converts the linear speed into radial speed through drag and linear. Okay. Universal surface gauge is used. It is used for turning a job. Okay. So option C. You can see here in the image, that is the universal surface gauge. Okay. It is most common marking tool used for scribing line parallel to datum surface and setting jobs and machine parallel to a datum surface and checking the height and parallelism of jobs and setting jobs concentric to the machine spindle. Okay, universal surface is used for turning of job. Okay, guide pin you can see at the bottom. Okay, so guide pin of this surface gauge helps to draw parallel lines along the datum edge. Okay, the permissible deviation for leveling of machine is, so that is option C, 0.03 or 300 mm. Okay, so permissible deviation is the difference in moisture contents, weight, mixtures, ingredients, strength, and sizes from that specified, that is considered as acceptable. Okay, it is also the distance or movement from the required position. Okay, which one of the following is used for checking runout of the internal taper of machine spindle? So answer is test mandrel and dial test indicators. Okay, you can see here in the image. So the mandrel and dial test indicator is used for checking the runout of the internal taper of machine spindle. Okay, both dial and test indicators are mainly comparative devices. Test indicators accelerate consistency measurements as opposed to comparative ones. Okay, they are most often used to explore relatively broad part surface in either one or two dimensions. Okay, for example, measuring variation in height, flatness, and roundness. Okay, they are designed to measure in vertical and horizontal positions and typically use it to measure clearances, tolerances, and variation in tolerances of machine part to ensure accuracy. Okay, the sensitivity of precision spirit level is, that is 0.02 to 0.05 or 1000 m. Okay, so you can see here in the image, that is the spirit level. Okay, a spirit level, bubble level, or a simply a level is an instrument designed to indicate whether a surface is horizontal or vertical. Okay, the sensitivity of the spirit level is given as angle of inclination. Okay, which among the following is not the purpose of a grease? So carry away heat produced in bearing. So that's the answer. Okay, this is the grease. We all know that, right? We are applying to the vehicles, machineries. Okay, well-known thing. So carry away heat produced in bearing is not the purpose of heat. Then what are the purpose of grease? Okay, so it prevents metal to metal contact and reduce friction. Okay, it prevents entry of foreign material, that is dust, dirt, etc. in the bearing. Okay, and it provide a cushion to the load and shocks. Okay, the main function of grease is to remain intact on the surface to provide the lubrication for the surface without leaking. Okay, and grease is used to keep vehicles, vessels, machines, and their components lubricated at all time. Okay, which one of the following is not the property of good lubricant? So among the options, option D becomes thicker after prolonged use. Okay, so this is the not a property of good lubricant. Okay, then what are the good properties of lubricant? So the good lubricant must have a high boiling point and low freezing point. Okay, and no change in viscosity due to variation in temperature, and reduce friction between machine parts, and takes up the surface pressure between sliding parts. And one more thing is that it protects from oxidation and corrosion. Okay, that's also the property of a good lubricant. Okay, which of the following statements is correct? So among the options, gauges are used to check the sizes. That's the correct answer. Okay, gauges are used to measure different types of objects having various sizes, shapes, and thickness, the gap in space, diameter of material, or pressure of the flow. Okay, gauges are used to check the size. Okay, it is made of alloy steel. It is a device used to provide certain dimensional information according to the specified standard or system. Okay, which one of the following gauges is used to align the lathe tool with the work? So that is center gauge. Okay, you can see here in the image, this is the center gauge. Okay, center gauge is used to align the lathe tool with the work. Okay, it is used to lathe work for checking the angles when grinding the profiles of a single point, cutting tool bits and centers. Okay, it is made up of spring steel, hardened and tempered, and is used for setting a single point thread cutting tool. Okay, identify the fit in the given figure. So before that, we will discuss types of fits. Okay, so here in the image you can see there are three types of fits. Okay, clearance fit, transition fit, interference fit. Okay, in this fit, in the clearance fit, size of hole is always greater than the size of the beam. Okay, clearance is the difference between the size of the hole and the size of the beam or a shaft, which is always positive. Okay, here the tolerance zone of the hole will be above the tolerance zone of the shaft. Okay, you can see here in the image very clearly. Okay, and the second one is transition fit. Okay, it may sometimes provide clearance and sometimes interference. Okay, so in between the clearance and interference. So here the tolerance zone of the hole and beam will overlap each other. Okay, and the third one is interference fit. In this fit, the size of hole is always less than the size of the beam. Okay, so interference is the difference between the size of the hole and the size of the beam, which is always negative. That is, shaft is always larger than the hole size. Okay, you can see here in the image. Okay, here the tolerance zone of the hole will be below the tolerance zone of the shaft. Okay, so examples of the clearance fit are slide fit, easy slide fit, running fit, slack running fit, loose running fit. Okay, and examples of the transition fit are push fit, ringing fit. Interference fit examples are force fit, tight fit, shrink fit. In the interference, we have to apply some force. Okay, in transition, it may or may not. Okay, but little amount of force is needed. Okay, not much as interference. Interference, we have to apply more force. Okay, so one more picture I am giving for the sake of remembering the hole sizes and all. Okay, so here the types of fits are clearance fit in that hole is greater than shaft. Okay, in interference fit, hole is less than the shaft. Okay, in transition, hole is equal to shaft. Okay, so here the answer is the given figure is a transition fit. Okay, Dash is one in which two assembled parts are always free to move relative to each other in the assembly. We have discussed that. That is a clearance fit. Okay, you can see here in the image. So it is one in which two assembled parts are always free to move related to each other. Okay, there is no external force. Okay, needed here, so it is free to move. So that is the clearance fit. Okay, before ringing, the mating surfaces of slip gauges should be wiped clean with. So it can be cleaned with soft linen cloth or chamois leather. Okay, so A or B. Okay, so if you observe any grease on the slip gauges, you can wash it in the carbon tetrachloride. Okay, a sign bar is made with 4 or 5 equally spaced holes on its body. The purpose of the hole is the purpose of the hole is to handle it easily. Okay, and it is also reduces the weight of sign bar. Okay, so both A and B are the answers. Okay, so the accuracy of sign bar is 0 point accuracy is 0.001 per inch. Okay, this is the accuracy of the sign bar. Okay, a sign bar is available in standard sizes. Which one of the following is not a standard size of the sign bar? Okay, the commonly available sizes are 100 mm, 200 mm, 250 mm, and 500 mm. So here the answer is 300 mm. Okay, 300 mm is not a standard size of the sign bar. Okay, one of the precision instrument used to check the dimensional accuracy of an external V thread is a screw thread micrometer. Which one of the following elements of a screw thread is checked with screw thread micrometer? So here the answer is pitch diameter. Okay, option C. Okay, you can see here in the image, this is the screw thread micrometer. Okay, so screw thread micrometer is used to check the dimensional accuracy of external V thread. Okay, by this, the depth of thread and pitch diameter can be measured. Okay, the depth of thread and pitch diameter can be measured by this screw thread micrometer. Okay, the V angle of the anvil and the spindle is 60 degrees to obtain the pitch diameter. Okay, it is a high precision measuring device employed for screw thread control. Okay, to measure the diameter screws and bolts, it measures the distance from the outer thread on one side to the outer thread on the other side. Okay, you can see here in the image. Okay, the instrument used to measure high temperature in the furnace is that is pyrometer. Okay, pyrometer is a device for measuring relatively high temperatures. Okay, most pyrometers work by measuring radiation from the body whose temperature is to be measured. Okay, radiation parameters are used to measure the temperature of red hot metals up to 3000 degrees centigrade. Okay, so you can see here, this is the pyrometer. Okay, E blocks are available in grades of. So E blocks are available in grade A and grade B. Okay, we have discussed this, right? So option D. Okay, V blocks are generally made of hardened steel or cast iron and are available in wide range of sizes. Okay, they are used when laying out the drilling ground works. Okay, and B grade V blocks are made from closed grain cast iron. Okay, A grade V blocks are made from high quality steel. Okay, I will write it down here. A grade V blocks made of high quality steel. Okay, high quality steel. And B grade V blocks made of closed grain cast iron. Okay, closed grain cast iron. Okay, and V blocks of grade A is more accurate and is found only up to 100 mm. Okay, 100 mm in length. Okay, V blocks of grade B is used for general work and is found up to 500 mm in length. Okay, so these are the V blocks. Okay, a master gauge is it is a standard gauge for checking accuracy of gauge used on a shop floor. Okay, so that is option B. Okay, master gauge is also called reference gauge or control gauge. Okay, I'll write it down here. Okay, is also known as reference gauge. Okay, or control gauge. Okay, okay, master gauge is also known as reference gauge or control gauge. Okay, master gauge is used for inspection just as there is an error in workshop gauge used on the machine. In the same way, there is a possibility of variation in the inspection gauge due to continuous testing of jobs in the inspection room. Okay, this gauge removes the error of inspection gauge. Okay, identify the part marked X in the figure. So that is scriber. Okay, so scriber is a marking tool made of high carbon steel. Okay, it is used for drawing lines while marking on metal jobs. Okay, the scriber should always be held diagonally in the direction of movement. Okay, it is its end get worn out due to repeated use. Okay, its edge should always be kept sharp. Okay, so here the answer is the most commonly used size of vernier height gauge is stated by the height of the beam is. So that is 300 mm. Okay, so vernier height gauge is a micrometer which is used to measure the height of the parts. Okay, identify and name the part marked X in universal surface gauge. So that is snug. Okay, so you can see this is the snug. Okay, the shape. Okay, so here the answer is snug. Okay, the two slip gauges in precision measurement are joined by ringing. Okay, slip gauges are manufactured by Johnson. Okay, hence they are also called Johnson gauge. Okay, slip gauge is also called Johnson gauge. Okay, also known as Johnson gauge or a gauge block. Okay, or gauge block. Okay, so slip gauges are manufactured by Johnson, so they are called Johnson's gauge. Okay, gauge blocks are made of tool steel. Okay, it is machined into rectangular blocks and left for seasoning. Okay, After natural and artificial seasoning, they are heat treated. Okay. The process of joining of two slip gauges is called ringing. Okay. The other name of screw pitch gauge is the other name of screw pitch gauge is that is thread gauge. Okay. So you can see here in the image that is the screw pitch gauge for a thread gauge. Okay. That is used to check the dimensions of the specific thread from angle, pitch, and diameter. Okay, it is used to check the pitch of external and internal threads. Okay, it is also used to compare the profile of threads. Okay, screw pitch gauge is used to check the pitch of the screw at about the range of the range of 0.35 mm to 5 mm. Okay, it is used to check the pitch, profile, and diameter of the thread. Okay. Straightness can be checked with the help of. So the answer is spirit level. Okay. The accuracy depends upon precision of instrument, precision of method, good planning. Okay. So all of the above. So option D. Okay. The taper of internal dovetail can be measured with the help of. So this can be measured with the help of balls of standard dimensions and slip gauges. Okay. There are situations where measurements of components cannot be taken directly. Okay, a typical example of this is dovetail. Okay, in such cases, it is possible to calculate the size and taper accurately from the measurement taken over the balls or roller replaced between standard measuring instrument and the component. Okay, so after cleaning the dovetail, the machined pair of precision rollers, the rollers are positioned in such a way that the rollers will contact the angular faces. Okay. The number of pieces in standard set of angle slip gauge in the second series is. So that is three. Okay. So slip gauges are three types. Okay, I'll write it down here. Slip gauges are three types. Okay. The first one is working gauge set. Okay. Working gauge set. Okay. And the second one is inspection gauge set. Okay. And the third one is master gauge set. Okay. How many grades of slip gauges are recommended by BIS 2984? So the answer is four grades of slip gauges. Okay. You can see here in the image there are four types of different slip gauges. Okay. And there. So first one is reference AAA, small tolerance, that is between plus or minus sorry 0.05 mm. Okay, and used to establish standards. Okay, and the second one is calibration, AA. Okay, medium tolerance, and used to calibrate inspection blocks and very high precision gauges. Okay, and third one is inspection. Okay, wider tolerance, and used to tool room standards for setting other gauging tools. Okay, and the fourth one is workshop, large tolerances, used as shop standards for precision measurement. Okay, name the gauge used for checking the V thread tool. So that is center gauge. Okay, so this is the center gauge. Okay, center gauge is used for setting to tool at accurate position and height. Okay, and it is used to align the lathe tool with the work. Okay, it is made up of spring steel, hardened and tempered, and it is used to check the angle of the tool. Okay, the flank angle and the form of the fine screw thread can be checked by using. So it is checked by using optical projector. Okay, you can see this is the optical projector. Okay, it is a device which enlarges the image. Okay, I'll write it down. Enlarge the image. Okay, okay. It is commonly used to measurement of optical instrument. Okay, optical comparators are used to check both dimensional accuracy and surface defects such as scratches and indentations. Okay, to check the dimensional limits of an external screw thread, the most suitable will be, so that is thread micrometer. Okay, it is used to check the dimensional limits of an external screw threads. Okay, this is the thread micrometer. Okay, it is used to measure the thread pitch diameter. Okay, the screw thread diameter has 60-degree pointed spindle and a double V-shaped swiveling anvil. Okay, you can see here in the image. Okay, the measuring instrument used to measure resistance is called, that is ohm meter. Okay, so this is the ohm meter. Okay, property of the measuring faces of gauge blocks to adhere to other measuring faces or two faces with similar surface finish is known as, that is ringing. Okay, ringing is the process of joining the slip gauges together. Okay, before ringing, the mating surface of slip gauges should be wiped clean with the chomas leather and soft liner cloth. Okay, which of the following is not the function of depth gauge? So that is measuring diameter of the holes. Okay, option D is not the function of depth gauge. Okay, depth gauge is used for measuring things such as depth of blind holes, depth of grooves, and height of protrusions. Okay, it is essentially a narrow steel rule to which a sliding head is clamped at the right angles to rule. Okay, the head forms a convenient marker in place where the rule must be held in a distance from the point being measured. Okay, so this is the depth gauge. Okay, the measurement on dial test indicators, that is lift of the plunger. Okay, again, dial test indicator is designed consists of a plunger which is slides in a circular body. Okay, you can see here in the image. Okay, dial indicator are measuring devices used in mechanical and industrial applications. Okay, they are designed to measure in vertical or horizontal position and typically used to measure clearance, tolerance, and variation in tolerance of machine parts of ensure accuracy. Okay, the measurement on dial test indicator is the lift of plunger. Okay, which one of the following precision measuring instruments is based on the principle of trigonometrical functions? We know that is sine bar. Okay, you can see here in the image. Okay, so we can calculate the angle by using the height of the gauge box. Okay, from the datum. Okay, this is the height. Okay, so length of the sine bar. Okay, from the center points of the rollers. Okay, this is the length. Okay, so sine theta equals to opposite side by hypotenuse. So that is h upon L. Okay, so theta equals to sine inverse of h by L. Okay, the gradual increase or decrease in diameter of piece of work measured along its length is called, that is taper. Okay, we know that that is the taper. You can see here in the image. Okay, gradual increase or decrease in diameter of the piece of the work along its length, that is called taper. Okay, so this is the taper. Okay, so here the diameter is d, here the diameter is d2. So comparatively d1 is greater than d2, right? So it's a gradual decrease. Okay, or we can say if we consider d2, okay, and d1 is greater than the d2. So it is a gradual increase in the with respect to the d2 point. Okay, what is the name of the instrument shown in the figure? So this is a bore dial gauge. Okay, option A. Okay, bore dial gauge is an instrument used for measuring ovalization and conicity and for control of internal diameter of circular holes. Okay, it used to measure. I'll write it down here. Measuring ovalization. Okay, and conicity. Okay, conicity and for control of internal diameter of circular holes. Okay, and for control of internal diameters of circular holes. Okay, okay, the least count of the bore dial gauge is 0.02 or 0.01 mm. Okay, least count is 0.02 or 0.01 mm. Okay, bore gauge is a tool that are unique to process of accurately measuring holes. Okay, what is the size of slip gauge buildup? So here the given slip gauges height are 25 and 16.5, 1.37, okay, and 1.002 and 1.0005. Okay, so 5, 2, 7, 8, how much? 4 here, 1 here. So 44.8725. So option B, right? Option B is the right answer. Okay. What is the name of instrument? We all know that this is a sine bar. Okay. What measurement is taken by slip gauge and precision roller? So here that is length of the job. Okay. Slip gauges are used as standard for operation length measurement. Okay. Slip gauge is also used for precise tool as inspection gauge block. Okay. It is used for highest precise work. Okay, such as measuring grade 1, grade 2, grade 3. Okay, grade 0 is this is used for tool room inspection. Okay, we all know that we have discussed in the previous slides. Okay, What is the name of instrument given in the figure? This is an screw pitch gauge. Okay, this is a screw pitch gauge. It is also known as thread pitch gauge. Okay, which part of the surface gauge enables to scribe parallel lines to the datum? That is guide pins. Okay, you can see here in the image. So button-like structures are there, right? So these are the guide pins. Okay, these are used to scribe parallel lines to the datum. Okay, zero setting of the 2.1 dial gauge before the measurement is necessary to. So it is necessary to eliminate inaccuracy of the measurement. Okay, so option D. Okay, zero setting is it's a dial should be set to zero before taking the measurement. Okay, this zero is determined by setting rings. Okay, setting fixtures can also be used with slip gauge for zero setting of dial bore gauge. The shape of the thread in the no-go end of a thread snap gauge is. So that is truncated. Okay. So thread snap gauges are available in either a knife edge style or a roller style. Okay. It's only used for checking external threaded parts. Okay. The working method of this gauge is similar of the snap gauge, but its structure is somewhat different. Okay. In this, both go and no go parts are made on the same side, back and forth. Okay. There is a go side in the front part of gauge and no go side in the back part. Okay, you can see here in the image. Okay, this is the thread snap gauge. Okay, the handle of thread plug gauge is made from ebonite material for it is for reducing the weight. Okay, the handle of thread plug gauge is made from ebonite material for reducing the weight. Okay, these are the plug gauges of different specifications. Okay, to convert the linear motion of the plunger of tail test indicator to the rotary motion of the pointer, which one of the following mechanism is used? So that is rack and pinion mechanism. Okay, so this is the rack and pinion mechanism. This is how the dial test indicator gonna work. Okay, so it converts the linear motion of the plunger of tail test indicator to the rotary of motion. Okay, you can see here in the image. Okay, the least count of veneer bevel protractor is that is 5 minutes. Okay, okay, it can be measured an angle with an accuracy of 1/12 of a degree. Okay, 5 minutes or a 1/12 of degree. Okay, so the least count of the veneer bevel protractor among the options that is 5 minutes. Okay, bevel gauge cannot measure angles. So bevel gauge cannot measure angles directly. Okay, so you can see here in the image, this is the bevel gauge. Okay, so bevel gauge is also known as sliding T bevel, fall square, and a adjustable gauge. Okay, I'll write it down here. Sliding T bevel, okay, or a fall square or a adjustable gauge. Okay, adjustable gauge. It is used for setting and transferring angles. Okay, different from square, which is fixed and can only set at an angle of 90 degrees. Okay, it can set an angle and transfer it on another piece. Okay, bevel gauges are indispensable guides which used to measure the sharpening angles of cutting edges of the chisel or a plane iron. Okay, a bevel gauge is a great way of maintaining and setting angles when grinding. Okay, the gauge which has an additional blade is that is universal bevel gauge. Okay, you can see here in the image, this is an universal bevel gauge. Okay, so the universal bevel gauge protractor is a high precision angle gauge used for accurate angle measuring of machines, molds, and jigs. Okay, it is used in tool room for measuring accurate angle of machine components. Okay, engineering steel rule is used to measure. Engineering steel rule is used to measure dimensions of workpiece. Okay, a V-threading tool is set square to the work axis with a center gauge. Okay, you can see here in the image, this is the center gauge. Center gauge is used for setting the lathe tool at correct center height. Okay, center gauge is used to align the lathe tool with the work. Okay, it is used to check its flank angle accuracy of single point metric V threading tools. Okay, it is made of spring steel, hardened and tempered. Okay, and it is used mainly for grinding and setting single point cutting tools. Okay, single point metric V threading tools are checked for its flank angle accuracy using a using a center gauge. Okay, the setup to check the taper angle of taper plug gauge using slip gauges and rollers is shown in the figure. A formula connecting the two measurements over the roller, that is x and y, the slip gauge height h and theta. Here this is theta. Okay. The half angle of the taper plug angle is derived for the calculation purpose. Which one of the following is the correct formula? Okay. So we can take major dia is x. Okay. That is d1. Measure dia d1 equals to x. Okay. From the endpoints of the top side rollers. Okay, and the minor dia, that is T2, that is X here. Okay, from the bottom rollers outside to outside dimension. Okay, so we can take this as A, this as B. Okay, so this is angle theta. Okay, we have to find this length. Okay, so in triangle ABC, in triangle ABC, BC equals to D1 minus D2, D1 minus D2 by 2. Okay, that's equals to X minus Y by 2. Okay, so and here height is given, so this is the H. Okay, so tan theta equals to where tan theta equals to BC. Sorry, here this is C. Okay, X minus Y by 2. Okay, by H. Okay, so the final formula equals to x minus y by 2h. Okay, so here the answer is option D, right? X minus y by 2h. Okay. A simple setup to determine the angle of a wedge-shaped workpiece by calculation is shown in the figure. A formula is derived connecting D, H, E, and which one of the following is correct formula? Okay. So, from geometry point of view, so this is alpha, right? So this is also be alpha, right? So angle alpha. Okay. So from this, so slip gauge length is E here. Okay. This half portion considered as. So total length is from here to here, E plus D. Okay. E plus D. Okay, half of the rollers, two rollers are there, right? So that is D plus E. Okay, so from the trigonometric equation, sine theta equals to perpendicular upon hypotenuse. So sine theta equals to perpendicular by hypotenuse. Okay, so here perpendicular is equals to H. Okay, so sine here theta is alpha, right? So sine alpha equals to H upon E plus D. Okay, so this is the base. Sorry, this is the base, this is the hypotenuse. Okay, like this. Okay, so sine alpha equals to H upon E plus D. Okay, the rib which mounted backside of angle is used for, that is used to prevent from distortion in angle plate. Okay, V block is used to hold round bars. It has a V groove which is usually 90 degree. Okay, grade B V block is available up to which of the following lengths? That is 300 mm. Okay, what is shape of cross section of slip gauge? That is 32 by 9 mm. Okay, the length of blade in feeler gauge is, the length of blade in feeler gauge is, that is 100 mm. Okay, it is used to check the clearance between mating parts. Okay, you can see here in the image that this is the feeler gauge. It is used to check the clearance between mating parts. Okay, it consists of grinded carbon steel strip of different lengths. Okay, it can measure in both mm and inches. Plain ring gauge are used to check. It is used to check outside diameter of workpiece. Okay, so you can see here in the image, this is a go ring. Okay, it is a no go ring. Okay, in this length of go gauge is less. Okay, and length of no go gauge is more. Okay, screw pitch gauge is used for determining what? That is pitch of thread. Okay, this is the screw pitch gauge. Okay, according to Indian standards, special group of slip gauge is used which included, that is 112 part. Okay, so total 112 sets are there in the slip gauge box. Okay, and it is used as standard for precision length measurements. Okay, you can see here in the image. Okay, these gauges are made in sets and consist of a number of hardened blocks made of high grade steel. Okay, what is the gauge used for measuring shape of hole, slots, or blank spaces? That is telescopic gauge. You can see here in the image. Okay, it is an indirect measuring device used to measure the internal diameter of a bore, hole, groove, slots, etc. Okay, this T-shaped tool consists of a handle, two telescopic rods, and a locking screw. Okay, a drill gauge is metal section of a rectangular or square section which have different types of diameters of hole. Okay, you can see here in the image. This is the drill gauge. Okay, it is used to identify the size of the drill. Okay, it is a metal section of rectangular or square section and contains various holes of different diameters. You can see here in the image. Okay, each hole is marked with a measurement based on its size. Okay, in which a progressive limit plug gauge, that is go N not go R on one side of gauge. You can see here in the image. Okay, go N not go R one side of the gauge. Okay, surface gauge are used. Surface gauge are used to making the accuracy of the work. Okay, so this is the surface gauge. Okay, it is dimensionless measuring instrument made of steel, also used to indicate the accuracy of evenness of the surface. Okay, it is a type of marking tool with a double-headed scriber. You can see here in the image. Okay, one is bent and one is straight. Okay, one is bent, one is straight sharpened. Okay, and one end is straight and the other is bent at 90 degrees. Okay, dash gauge is used to check the clearance between two mating surfaces. That is failure gauge. Okay, you can see here in the image. This is the failure gauge. Okay, it is used to check the clearance between mating parts. Okay, it consists of grained carbon steel strips of different length. Okay, it can measure both in mm and inches. Okay, in hydraulic and pneumatic circuit symbol, G is used from pressure measuring gauge. Okay, this is the pressure measuring gauge. Okay, this can be represented as G in the circuit. Okay, which one of the following characteristic is very important while selecting a gauge? That is wear resistance. Okay, gauge should be wear resistant and life of gauge should be more. Gauge should not be ductile. Okay, strength of the gauge should be more. Gauge should be corrosion resistant. Okay, so the most important one is wear resistant. Okay, a failure gauge is used for failure gauge is used for this is the failure gauge. Okay, we have discussed that. So this is checking gaps between mating parts. Okay, at what standard temperature are the gauges kept in the inspection room? So that is 20 degrees centigrade. Okay, gauges are made of high carbon steel, chromium steel, vanadium steel, etc. Okay, the accuracy of reference gauge is the accuracy of reference gauge is 0.001 mm. Okay, it is used for checking the accuracy of inspection gauge. Okay, and it is used to calibrate or set micrometers, comparators, or other gauging systems. Okay, hardness of slip gauge should be this should be more than 63 HRC. Okay, and slip gauges are used as standards for precision length measurement. Okay, it is made in sets and consists of number of hardened blocks made of high grade steel having lower thermal expansion. Okay, A no-go plug gauge is used to check the dash of a hole. That is an upper limit. Okay. Go plug gauge is minimum hole limit or a lower limit. I will write it down as go, sorry, go plug gauge is for minimum hole limit. Okay. Minimum hole limit. No go plug gauge is maximum hole limit. Okay. Minimum hole limit or a lower limit. Maximum hole limit or a maximum upper limit. Okay. Which type of surface gauge is used on a cylindrical surface? That is universal type surface gauge. Okay. You can see this is the universal type surface gauge. Okay. Which gauge is used to measure the thickness of sheet? That is a wire gauge. You can see here in the image, this is the wire gauge. Okay. Mm, Plug gauge is used to measure the diameter of hole. Okay. Ring gauge is used to measure the diameter of shaft and studs. Okay. Feeler gauge is used to measure clearance between mating parts. Okay. Which, if not true for a wire gauge? So option B is to measure electric conductivity of wire. That is the wrong answer. Okay. Which of the following statement is true for slip gauges? So that is metal block which are ground and lapped to specific thickness. Okay. The number which specify thickness of sheet metal is known as, that is wire gauge. Okay. Number of threads per inch in screw or bolt is checked by, that is checked by screw pitch gauge. Okay. Thread ring gauges are used to check external threads. Separate go and no go gauging numbers are provided. Which one of the following screw thread element is not checked with this ring gauge? So thread gauge measures pitch, profile, and pitch diameter. Okay. So here the wrong answer is helix angle. Okay. So it does not measure helix angle. Surface gauge is a, it is a marking tool. Okay. And used to measure the accuracy of workpiece. Okay. It is dimensionless as an instrument, also used to indicate the accuracy or evenness of surface. Okay. So this is the surface gauge. Okay. Best wire size is the one which, when placed in the thread groove, will make contact to the effective diameter. Okay. You can see here in the image, this is the standard wire gauge. Okay. So this wire gauge is used to measure thickness of sheet and thickness of the wire. Okay. Thank you.